Hey, what's up everyone? Today we are going to dive into a different kind of video. I want to show you a behind the scenes mindset of where I go in my mind when I'm getting ready to counsel somebody. And we're going to tackle actually a really divisive hypothetical case today. And I want you to imagine if Ruby Franke, the disgraced YouTuber mom who was recently arrested for abusing her kids, was to walk into my office, and I'm going to give you a sense of some of the concerns that would come up in my mind, maybe besides the obvious ones, and think about how I would go about working to be a good therapist for her, in contrast to the terrible therapist that she had been working with previously. So I'm going to raise some of the objections that I would think of in my mind, or that I might imagine, and then we'll talk through how I would think through that and how I would try to remain objective, empathetic for a person that a lot of people have written off as just scum of the earth. Let's dive in. Okay, first question that comes up in my mind, and I think a lot of you have mentioned that in the comments or got hinted at it: how can you show empathy to such a terrible person? I guess my initial response to that is that's kind of the point of empathy, is that there's an unconditional positive regard. That's from Carl Rogers, the father of humanistic psychology, that we can make a choice to see things from someone else's perspective. And that is what empathy is. That's not necessarily saying that they're right or saying that what they are thinking is true, but just to be able to step in and say, okay, I can see why you would think this way, even if it goes against our values, even if it's illegal or wrong. And the way I would show empathy to her if she were walking into my office is to hear her story. And this is where I need to separate myself from my personal self, the person that I am outside of the office, from my counseling or therapy self, to not bring in some of those preconceptions that I have based on reading articles about her, watching videos about her, seeing what she said and seeing what she's done, but to allow her to share her story on her own terms. And this is not a willful denial of what she's done, but just allowing her to tell her story and being able to dive into how she feels about things that have happened, things that have brought her to this point. And then from those feelings, from the way that she tells her story, to be able to extract some of the values that she holds, and using her values as a barometer for her to be able to evaluate, really, how are things working for me? If I value this, are my actions backing that up? Am I moving and acting and living in line with the things that I say are important to me? And if not, what do I need to change to be able to live in that way? Hey everyone, hope you're enjoying the channel. What I want to talk about real quick is just where the channel is going in the next couple of months. We have recently hit monetization levels on YouTube, and what I want to do with this threshold is to really engage your support and ask for your help in taking our channel to the next level. One of the next steps I really want to take is doing live streams. And what would really help is having a Chromebook to be able to be mobile with those live streams. Right now I work off of a desktop computer, which works great, but I just can't carry that around. So I'm asking for your support on this GoFundMe to take the interaction that we see in our comments section and take that live in live streams for everyone to be able to engage in and to be able to talk about different perspectives in mental health and to learn more about mental health in the process. The second step is to take our shows and videos and make them mobile. And to that end, again, with your support on this GoFundMe, looking for wireless lav mics instead of the wired kind that keep me tethered to a certain spot, to have the freedom of movement, and along with that, to get a Pivo, which is an AI phone stand that'll actually track my movements as I'm moving around, so that we can have mobile videos instead of me just sitting here. We can be engaging with other mental health professionals, recording videos where I'm doing things and talking about things instead of just sitting still. So those are the two ways I'm trying to level up this channel. I would really appreciate your support in making that a reality. Thank you so much for listening. Let's get back to the content. Second objection I can hear, and this I got a lot from the comments section of the previous video: she has a personality disorder. She's not going to change. To that I say, okay, maybe she does have a personality disorder. I've never met the woman and I've never diagnosed her, and I don't plan to in this video. I can see why people might think that. What I would say to that is there are still treatments available for people with personality disorders. You can get into dialectical behavioral therapy, ways that encourage people to evaluate what impact their actions and words have on other people, to be able to practice empathy, to be able to practice communication that is healthy and practice respecting boundaries. Those are all very skill-based things that could potentially benefit somebody who has a personality disorder or some other kind of mental illness. In addition to that, it's very likely that if Ruby Franke were to walk into my office seeking counseling, is that it would be court mandated, which means that she wouldn't necessarily be a willing client, but that as part of whatever sentence she has to serve, that counseling would be a mandated part of that, and if she didn't participate, then she would have further consequences from the legal system. And so in that sense, she might have her own personal goals, whatever those might be, and that would be important for me to figure out from her as well. But there might also be court-specific goals, things that the judge is requiring that she work towards, and that would help inform some of what we need to do as well. And this comes up with not just people like Ruby Franke, but clients who are mandated to do counseling because they're facing drug charges. Sometimes their goal is, I want my probation officer off my back. That's fine, we can work with that. And that's a very motivational interviewing kind of ability to be able to take what seems kind of a rebellious or just kind of very non-committal goal and be able to say, okay then, if we want your probation officer off your back and to stop bugging you about this stuff, what do they need to see to be able to leave you alone for a little bit? So a lot of this is working around my own assumptions and my own sense of values to be able to put the ball back in her court, to be able to say, this is what's important to me and this is how I want to work towards that goal. A third objection that is probably going to populate the comments: she doesn't deserve to have her kids back. To that I say, that is not up for me to decide. That is going to be a legal issue, a CPS issue. That is not going to be for me to decide. If she were my client, there might be a point where the judge might ask me for like a treatment summary or some kind of recommendation one way or the other. Then I'd be consulting with a lawyer. I would be in contact with whatever legal officers are responsible for her case to be in dialogue with them so that I'm not recommending something that doesn't line up with what the court has set out. As we talk about autonomy of clients too, even for somebody who is facing legal charges like Ruby Franke is, getting her kids back may not be her goal at this point. And that's very sad to say, but that could be the case. And so, and respecting her autonomy, if that's not what she cares about right now, maybe her goal is just getting out of jail, or her goal is restoring her reputation. I don't know what it could be. It could be any number of things. But respecting that means that if kids are not on the radar for her right now, then that's not on my radar either. That might change a little bit depending on if the court says she has to be working towards that or taking parenting classes. That would be where that would inform our treatment planning, if the court said she has to take like remedial parenting classes or something like that. Then that would figure into our work, because that's not up to either of us. That's what the court has mandated. Final objection I could see, and you guys may comment below a bunch of other objections and I'll try to answer those as I get to them. She has been lying on camera for years and years. You can't trust anything she says. And that's a fair point. Clearly, she's gotten very comfortable with living a life that seems very out of touch with reality in the way that she frames the punishments around her kids and presents herself and presents her family on camera versus what was happening when the cameras were off. And so this is where the partnership with the legal system could be very helpful here. I can get corroboration from lawyers, other officers of the court, parole officers, probation officers. And so I don't have to take everything that she says as gospel. And this is where I can see some of you saying like, whoa, Isaiah, like earlier you said unconditional positive regard, let her share her story. And that may be true. That doesn't mean I'm going in blindfolded. The difference is that we're dealing with facts here in terms of getting corroboration from police or probation officers on things that she's doing with her time outside of counseling. When it comes to her emotions and how she's seeing things, that's something that she needs to create for herself, that she needs to create an understanding of. And while I might help to shape that and guide that, That's got to be something that she figures out for herself. So having unconditional positive regard for somebody does not mean giving them a license to lie to your face, especially as that would be counterproductive to probably most of the goals that she might reasonably have in therapy, as well as the court mandated ones. And beyond that, if we get into this process of therapy for a little bit and she does get caught in a lie, the important part is not to just say, aha, I got you. I'm going to tell your probation officer that you've actually been doing this. The point is not to just catch her, but to use that as an opportunity to delve into, okay, why did you feel the need to lie to me? What was going on behind the scenes? What were you thinking when you decided to say one thing when something else had happened already? You know, some reasons for lying might be about, I didn't want to look bad in front of my therapist, or I just thought that was embarrassing. And then we could delve into, why do you think that's embarrassing? I told myself that I had failed in this regard and I didn't want to admit that I had failed. What's so bad about failure? What is so off-putting about it that you could not admit it in this kind of setting? Even if there were dishonesty, that's an opportunity for us to dive into the way her world works, the beliefs that she has that may have shaped what went into the criminal charges that she's facing now. Those are all opportunities for me to dive in, work with that to try to prompt some change. And then finally, what I would say is, if we're able to have that unconditional positive regard, if I'm able to show that as she shares her story, as she shares her values, that I'm not judging her, that I'm not just the person behind the screen who's commenting and judging her and evaluating everything that she did, saying she's a terrible person, all of that stuff. She doesn't need another person saying that. There are millions of people around the country already saying all of that. But if she is able to feel heard and able to trust, maybe that decreases the need for her to be dishonest in this kind of situation. Maybe being able to start recognizing, how do I build trust? How do I restore trust in relationships, especially as if she ever wants to be back with her kids, trust is going to be a major factor in that. So that's kind of my dive into what my thought process is if, in fact, Ruby Franke were to be my client the next day, and I don't think she ever will be. This is the thought process that I have for pretty much any client. Unconditional positive regard, letting them tell their story on their own terms. It's not up to me to fact check everything right away. It's important for me to know what's true and what's not, but as they share their stories, even the way they distort things, even the way they frame things is informative and can help us create change. The second value is definitely autonomy, as I tried to state throughout. Regardless of the court mandated piece, which is an important part that sometimes the judge will say you need to be working on X, Y, and Z, it's also important for the client to have some kind of buy-in. For, hypothetically in this case, Ruby Franke to be able to say, well, I want to work on these things right now. And even if I don't think those are the right things for her to work on, either at least having that discussion about like, well, okay, let's see how these all line up with what you need to do for court, but also respecting that she has an opinion and that she can help drive this process. So thank you everyone for checking out this video. I do want to acknowledge that there is a separation between therapist me and personal me. As you get a look into my thought process behind this, you'll see that I suspended judgment on stuff like child abuse, torturing kids, psychological and emotional abuse. That's not because I don't believe those things are wrong. That's because in this moment, she does not need someone else telling her that those things are wrong. I think after everything that's happened, she at least knows it cognitively, even if she doesn't believe what she did is wrong, which I have no basis to judge whether that's true or not. My point is that providing her that respect, that empathy, that autonomy, those are ways for her to be able to feel safe talking about things that maybe she wants to change about herself and can actually practice moving towards that change. And so that's the process of therapy. My specific interventions may differ from other counselors, but this is how we create that potential and that space for somebody to feel safe making changes. Again, thank you all for checking out this video. Please like and subscribe. That helps us to create more content for you all. Thanks for tuning in. See you all next time.